So welcome back, everybody. This is Night Flight, and today Jason Christoph is back, as you can see, and our topic will be, yeah, who would you be without your story? So, Jason, before we jump into our subject, I would like to clarify something. Yes, there are external, let's say, obstacles. We just briefly talked about Kenya, and there is something like systemic poverty. There is, I listened to the Gen Zs and they were complaining that when they apply for an ID, which you need in Kenya to get a scholarship or whatever, they have to wait for 8 months and longer, simply
Yeah.
because it's so corrupt that people, they just don't do their job.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, there are external blockages, of course, but we are focusing on something today that where you sabotage yourself with old ways of thinking. And that is just something that I would like to clarify.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good clarification that external forces are at play. So, is today's topic, what would I be without my story or my identity? Which one is it?
Yeah, wouldn't you say that these two go hand in hand?
It is absolutely. They go hand in hand, and we want to help people. We want to help people understand that identity is sort of a real big safe mooring to tie your boat to in life. And if your identity is shaken, yes, you can get really nervous and you can do some very dangerous things. Like, for example, if a doctor during COVID was told they couldn't practice unless they applied the medical experimentation to their patients, this put on a big identity crisis where most people can't handle trying to reconcile getting a new identity. So it can be very dangerous to have an identity and then to have it threatened. Saying that, today's identities are mostly given to us. We're given our identities sort of from, as Michael Tsarion says, the spinner rack of prefabricated identities. And if people don't know what a spinner rack is, it's if you go to a comic book store maybe 10 years ago, or even today, I haven't been in one. And, they're trying to save space. And it's one of those racks that spin around so you can put as many magazines on it as possible in a small amount of space. So today, our identities are being formed by sort of even our occupations. People identify themselves with their occupations, which can be really, really dangerous. And even more dangerous, if you go down a couple more layers, is those occupations are sort of handpicked by the social engineers to be the only occupations we're given options for at a career day or in public school or high school. So today, people have the same identity obsessions and addictions where a lot of their security revolves around their identity and who they think they are. But that's one of the clever tricks is we're not our jobs. And the average person today would be terrified if you took their job away because their identity would sort of float away into dandelion fluff. And that's not even our identity to begin with. And some of our identities that we're given as well aren't only the occupations, which are very limited. You can have a job poisoning people, treating people from the poisoning. You can manufacture the poisoning, everything. All these prefabricated jobs are basically in the poisoning industry, which the average person sort of will have a hard time wrapping their head around it. But there's these other identities where people will want to go to be, say, a rebel, or they don't like some of their other identities and they want to add some extra layers of different identities on the top because teacher is too boring for them. That's maybe their primary identity. So they become a teacher and then they layer on another fabricated, prefabricated identity as a wine mom or as a wine connoisseur. So you can see there's some real issues with finding who we are, what our true identity is, and all the things that we're given, whether someone's a vapor or they're a drinker or they're obsessed with tattoos. None of these things get us any closer to realizing why we're here and who we are and what we're really meant to do while we're on this planet. And of course, the social engineers make sure they don't want us coming into contact with our true identity. And I don't even know my true identity. I just know that it's not working for someone. I haven't worked for anybody since I've been 24 years old. I was always being self-employed in my own areas of interest. And those areas of interest have allowed me to experiment and discover and research who I really am because I have full use of my time. I don't get told when I have to go to work, when I have to go home, what vacation I should be taking and for how long. And of course, all my business, I mean, 8 out of 10 of my business ideas were failures. So never be afraid to fail. Only 2 out of 10 of my business ideas were great, but they've made me millions of dollars. And that allows me to research who I am. And they don't want you having that time. They don't want you having that freedom. They don't want you having the options. And that's why all of these prefabricated identities are there so that everybody can think, this is a real big buffet that the teacher's giving me, that the high school counselor's giving me, that the job market is giving me, but it's nowhere near who we really are. And then that saddens the soul. It knows everything. It knows when you're not really executing your cosmic charge on the earth. And if you don't pick up these addictions as identities, you'll pick them up as addictions to sort of dull your pain. And see, all these things work like a watch. There's 150 pieces in the average watch. So you can see me going from sort of topic to topic, and these things all work exactly together, where not only are the addictions there to sedate and dull our pain, we're inundated with these other identities that make us believe that if you're in pain, you're the problem. There's something wrong with you. There's a malfunction. So we're taught that if we're in pain, it's bad. We're taught that pain is a goblin and really pain is a guardian. So you can see that if you get these concepts not wrong, but if you don't know they're out there, if you don't know they exist, and you don't know that it's okay to research them, how about you don't even have the time or the money to research these things openly, you can see you'll start spiraling, the drain pretty quickly in terms of trying to find your way, trying to find happiness, trying to find evolution and peace and prosperity in your own life. And although I've never found the end destination of any of those things, I can tell when I'm getting closer and I can tell when I'm getting farther apart. And that's why it's good to just have these, little discussions about, maybe the one line topic so people can understand, hey, look, if you're listening to this and you're in pain, of course you're in pain. You live on a planet mental asylum. So, and that's painful, but don't run away from it. Don't go drink and don't watch TV and don't scroll your phone and don't vape and don't smoke and don't do narcotics. Don't do that. Just sit with the pain, because the answer for all our pain is inside the pain, as many famous sages have said over thousands of years, is let the pain come in and let it sit with you, hear its messages, Because, if you have a toothache and all you do is take Tylenol, but you never fix the tooth, eventually it's so rotting it can jeopardize your life. And the average person today, they might be confused about why the world's a bit of a mental asylum, and they've ignored it so long. Not only does their soul start to rot because there's no inquiry, but the substances that help us ignore that reality, they come with their own set of diseases that they will cause. Alcohol causes its own set of diseases. Vaping does. Narcotics do. Caffeine addiction does. So it's not only that our soul starts to decay and we get a lot of emotional disease in the depression realm, but the sedative substances that dull our pain force, they have a whole other set of diseases. So you can see why people might need some clarification on these points. Number one, don't get too addicted to your identity. You're not a teacher. You're not a firefighter. You're not a police officer. But when we're young, or you're not a nurse, you can see though when we're unsure of ourselves when we're young, and that's completely natural, and we're going over the options for our identities, which are, they say, as our occupations. I guess that's the best we can do today. A lot of my friends and a lot of my colleagues went for the sort of identities where you could walk into a room and your identity would speak a little bit about who you think you really are as a good person. Like if I said, look, I'm a teacher, you walk into a room, you say, I'm an elementary teacher, they're like, oh, that's so nice, right? So we got to also, or if you're a doctor, you're a helper. These, a lot of people are picking their identity on not what they like to do, but does the identity satisfy their base emotional needs to be accepted by others? That's how a lot of people are picking their careers today. And that can be very dangerous for spiraling depression and spiraling addictions. Because if you're picking your occupation, which in our society is your primary identity, based not on what you want to do, but based on how people will receive you when you walk into a room, I'm a firefighter and like a hero, or I'm a policeman and you're looked at as a hero. And all that again is fabricated because we've been inundated with repetitive content about who teachers are in media, who police officers are, who firefighters are, who government officials are. And you can see there's sort of a machinery in all this. And it's a machinery to lead us astray and lead us away from who we really are. And the farther we get, and some people are like, I don't give a shit who I am. And I'm like, that's okay. But unfortunately, if don't give a shit long enough, you'll be able to understand that you will get this weird pain, this sort of soul loss. There'll be something else going on energetically in your body that they've never taught you about, that you might be able to say you're cool with not caring about this, that, or the other thing, or things that are important. You don't care who you are, but energetically things will change in you, and you will become a weaker version of yourself, regardless of what you've set yourself up to be. So anyway, Judith, do you have any comments on anything I've said?
Yeah, I totally agree. Most people, when you ask them, who are you, they will tell you what they do as a job. And but of course, this aspect of our lives is very strongly connected to, yeah, let's say an existential threat when it falls away, because that is how you make your money. And then, especially if you have maxed out all your credit cards and what have you, and then this particular piece of your life breaks away, it can send people into panic mode.
Mhm.
And I think that is not a coincidence that it is structured this way. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, Judith. I mean, I agree with you 100%. It is, and I mean, let's take what happened in 2020. I've done the research. This was decades in the making, maybe hundreds of years in the making. And it was to give people these identities and have them live check to check. I mean, a lot of my friends make in Canadian funds, I don't know what it's going to be in euro, but take 50% off, but maybe they make 100 or 150,000 or even 200,000 Canadian, but and that could be part of their identity that I make a pretty good amount of money. I have a pretty nice house. I have a jet ski. I have a cottage. I do pretty well. And then what they did with those people, and let me back up a bit because I'm 54 years old and I was born in Truro, Nova Scotia. That's the east coast of Canada. And when I moved from there to St. John's, Newfoundland, which is our farthest eastern province, it's a little rough of a province. But when I was a kid, working for the government was known as the worst job you could ever get. It was only minimum wage, and you were known to be too dumb to get another job. So you had to work for the government. It was the least attractive. So over time, and I remember that, I can remember the old people, adults around me making fun of government workers, telling me they made minimum wage because they're too dumb to work anywhere else. And that's the only place you could get a job is with the government. And only in my lifetime that's gone. They overpay them. They set them up with this, the pension and the soft life and the comfortable life. And again, the comfort there can become an addiction that we call laziness. But beyond that, what we saw in 2020 was sort of set up in this identity way, this threat to their identity because for 15 years, because I've been in business my whole life with hard asset businesses as well. So I noticed the interest rates for 15 years before COVID launched. It was like prime -1 for a loan, prime minus the half. And I'm like, prime's like 2. So if it's prime -1 for a loan for a new cottage, a new garage, a new kitchen, a bathroom renovation, and I'm like, hold on here because I mean, if interest rates go up and the person's still in this loan cycle, 1 to 2 points in interest raising on your loan can double your payment on the house. And I thought this is very dangerous. So what I'm trying to say is that if you look at the full spectrum issues, yes, they've identified the identity as people's occupations, identified their, forced their identity into a certain income bracket, put them in debt to the point, or sort of entice them with subprime interest rates to get into debt to sort of launch the mousetrap in 2020 and say, and this is a clever mousetrap, because it's not like they're trying to do basically it's a different level of corruption because we're sort of used to the manila envelope full of cash maybe being pushed back at the politician because there was a road contract awarded to a certain company. Meets them in the parking lot. Here's 10 grand. Thanks very much. This governmental media manipulation was designed to euthanize the public. So it wasn't just that there was a little tomfoolery involved. There was something very nefarious where psychologically you take the person's identity, which is their primary security in life is someone's identity. And then you tell them if you do not comply sort of with your own euthanasia, that your identity will be stolen. Now, that's a deal with the devil. Absolutely. Your identity will be taken right away, or you can come over here and take a gamble, and you might even lose your life. But someone says, well, I'd rather be dead than be alive without my identity. That's how much the identity scores for security inside the subconscious mind. And you can see, I mean, I don't know if we're getting off topic here, but we have to be very careful with our inability to back away from our identity and establish a new one. And if we believe our job is going to be threatened in the future, we should start thinking about these things now and maybe start a business. And the thing is, too, again, just like the watch, many different pieces in the schools that never teach you business plans, only teach you resumes, give you the prefabricated identities and occupations from the spinner rack. They're not going to teach you on purpose how to feather your own bed financially. So they will expose you to no financial betterment material. And where did I get my material? Because usually our tribe sets our vibe really early in life. I was surrounded by a group of sort of mentally insane entrepreneurs around the dinner table, around the family table. And so I kept all the good programming because what you're repeatedly exposed to is proven to set your ideas and set your truth. So I was repeatedly exposed to entrepreneurs. It's all they did. Who made the most money? It was always measuring whose wallet was bigger and who had the best idea, but they were also alcoholics. So you keep the programming that works for you, obviously. I kept the business programming. I got rid of the addiction programming, which we can certainly do. But what we have to understand is that if you feel like your identity was threatened in the last attack in 2020, you should be really sitting in that pain, not watching the TV, not drinking, not, not eating junk food, not ordering pizza on a Friday night. Get your health in order, which will get your brain in order. And then really just know that they're going to come again. And if you don't know how to get a new identity, or don't know if you don't have the strength to back out of your old identity without having a new one ready to catch you, maybe you should be starting to feather your bed right now and change the repetitive content of your environment to people like me who are independent, more independent. No one's truly independent. No one's going to say, I don't need food, I don't need water, I don't need electricity. I mean, we all know some people make those claims. It doesn't make any sense. But what you want to understand is this, whatever this group is, whoever they are, and I mean, we've done some talks before on who they are, they're not good people and they seem to like death. I've tried to explain why they like death, and I think maybe the Egyptian interview that we did, I tried to explain sort of the cultish background of the group that are attacking us. But they're serious. They have very serious belief systems that are different from ours. And although the average person would say, "Oh, I would never do that. I would never try and trick someone to kill themselves." Yeah, you wouldn't, but they do it all the time. And they're controlling your politicians, and they have these weird belief systems where they literally believe that offering your death to their old gods gives them favors. And that's as easy as I can explain it. So, in regards to identity, if you're a doctor, or I mean, these poor doctors, they were told to inject themselves with this stuff as well. And if you follow Dr. William Makis, Makis, out of Canada, he's logged like 200 Canadian doctors have died prematurely with no disease causation other than taking the shot. So be careful because your life's on the line with this trickery. And a lot of the trickery is anchored in the attack on your identity, which will be the attack on your occupation and the attack on your social standing because of your income. So I've taught children. I mean, there's this one kid that I brought to a hockey practice when he was 15, and I was driving him by myself. And his parents have conventional jobs, but they're pretty good side hustlers too, both of them. But I told this kid at 15, read Rich Dad Poor Dad, because he's a relative of mine. I said, read Rich Dad Poor Dad. The worst thing you can do is be financially sort of under the thumb of another person. You're young, start now. He did it. He went home. He bought it the next day. He read it. He talked about it. They couldn't shut him up about the book. And then he started to observe other entrepreneurs, which is one of the things they teach in this Robert Kiyosaki book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And he started to buy little motorcycles, fix them up, and sell them. Last time I was in the town where this kid was, he's 19 now, and he was flipping a $60,000 motor home, and he was also flipping a piece of land he bought for 200,000. He was selling it for 325,000, and he had accumulated around 300,000 in cash over, say, the last 4 years of ever since he took my advice. So what you see there is sort of like the ultimate, it's not the ultimate inoculation to getting your identity threatened, but this man not only has learned to feather his own bed financially, he was fixing the toilet on the motorhome. He was fixing the fiberglass on the motorhome. He knows how to fix washers, dryers, lawnmowers, motorcycle engines. He knows how to change a tire. He knows how to order parts and put the new parts. He knows so much. And this is why people are so vulnerable to identity attack today, is because they're not understanding who's attacking them, what the attack really is, or that their identity will be challenged for sort of maybe a fatalistic exchange. But we're here to do what that kid has done. We're not here to explore these prefabricated occupations, prefabricated identities, and work these jobs, go down to our friends at the bar and tell them in Canada, everybody talks about the pre-tax income in Canada, which I find is funny. They'll say, yeah, I make 140,000. I'm like, that's good. What's your tax rate? Well, the tax rate on 140,000 is about, if you include levies and fees that are outside the tax system, it's 60%. You're going
Hmm.
to lose 60%. So we have to get outside these illusions, and we really have to be truthful with ourselves that just because you'll get attacked, you will get attacked if you're different than the herd, you will have a harder time. The pain teacher will come and visit you, but that's still not a good enough reason to go to the spinner rack of prefabricated identities given to you by the government and pick one of those personalities to live out for the rest of your days. Because not only is it sort of spiritual suicide, they've crafted the entire system so that they can make these proposals to you. Take this injection of poison. It's not illegal for you to kill yourself, but it is illegal for them to kill you. That's why they're trying to get you to euthanize yourself. And of course, it's everywhere. Even Denmark has the #1 level or amount of, what do you call that? Medical assistance in dying. It
Mm-hmm.
is #3. Now, Canada's actually the most per 1,000 people. We're actually ranked #1. Denmark has the most deaths, but in Canada, we have the most medical assisted suicides per capita. So just so that the people know, this identity crisis that's going to come around again is tied to the legalities having to do with death, where it's illegal and can cause much legal repercussion if the state and the state actors euthanize you by their own force. But actually, there is no legal ramifications if they trick you by holding your identity hostage and you euthanize yourself. And I think that was important to really mention, because people say, well, why are they doing this? They Why do they do it? Because it's called a cauterization of the inheritance line. It's another legal loophole that if I can trick you to sort of euthanize yourself and maybe your wife or your husband, so I eliminate the parents through the vaccines, and then you have the children. But the same group has the children in school. So maybe I got rid of the parents. And then I got sort of a free go, free run at the children. And I teach the kids to question their sexual identity, where they're not really interested in reproducing, or they use some of these sterilization chemicals like Lupron, where they actually, castrate themselves surgically. Well, here's the legality of it. If I can stop the inheritance line, either through trickery like that or tricking you to euthanize yourself, I get your assets as the government. A lot of people don't know that if there is no one to inherit the wealth, it comes to the government. People say, well, that's not so bad. Well, haven't you noticed the government's not the government? So it's like a band of ancient ruling families, and they're ancient criminal ruling families, and this is why they're up to this trickery. And we have to sort of get wise to it, why it's happening, what they're holding hostage to get us to participate in our own slide into the graveyard for so that they're on side legally. So I don't know if that's where you wanted to go, Judith, but I think it's important that people know the full story of why their identity will be held against them and held hostage.
Yeah, yeah, thank you for pointing that out. What about, yeah, let's say family stories? Let's say you grow up in a family where the mantra is, we are simple people, we are not meant for wealth, but we get by, and we are not such people that step out of the line, yada, yada, yada. And you hear that growing up all the time, and chances are yeah, you will believe that, and your life will reflect that.
Yes, this is proven. So sometimes people will think it's fate, though, and just explaining it to people that we have this part of the mind that really likes the security of the tribe, and it runs the invisible programs like I've talked about before. And all of us want to be like our mom or be like our dad, not because we really want to be like them, but it's safer to be like them because if we're like them, they accept us more. So it's really important for us to mimic all the tribal customs and tribal rituals and tribal ceremonies. This is completely natural. This is how we've survived as a species for as long as we have, even though that's sort of in jeopardy right now. They're using that against us as well because they're fabricating repetitive content that we follow naturally that's really disastrous. But if you should also understand that if you do decide to break from the tribe, psychologically, your nervous system knows you're making a break. Maybe you're taking on another ceremony of another tribe, a different ritual, a different custom. Your nervous system will put a lot of fear responses through itself to try and stop you from making the changes. And it's counterintuitive because you could be mimicking alcoholism, self abuse. I mean, basically, if you're in an overweight tribe, if your family is overweight, any psychologist will tell you, hey, look, it's safer to your nervous system to be overweight because if you come back thin and tell them at Thanksgiving that you'll bring your own organic meal, well, you just insulted the alpha and the omega because they're probably having a whole bunch of junk food. So, so basically, people should know that it's natural to mimic and copy and emulate and mirror the most repetitive content of your environment. And just know that if your parents were alcoholics, it's safer to be an alcoholic. Like this, there's nothing wrong with you if you're an alcoholic. Like it's just that's the way you're wired. If they're smokers, it's safer for you to smoke. And so it's important to know that when you want to break that habit because it's killing you, even though your nervous system says, look, I don't this part of the nervous system doesn't think of the cancer when you're 80. It thinks about the bonding today. So it'll be up to you to realize how you're programmed and then reprogram yourself and also realize the day you quit smoking, the day you quit drinking, the day you quit junk food, you will feel alone. And that alone feeling is the most nervous feeling in the entire spectrum of emotional responses. And this is, and people are like, oh, I don't really believe that. Well, go to prison. What's the biggest punishment in prison? So you got the rapist, the murderer, and the pedophile in the general population. Is the biggest punishment being in the general population? It isn't. The biggest punishment is something called isolation, right? When you go in the hole by yourself, you got no one to talk to. So in the human nervous system, being alone is the biggest fear you're going to have. And your nervous system, although you need to quit smoking and lose weight and become wealthy, because yeah, poor people might have got by for the last 30 years, but I don't know if you understand. I mean, I'm sure you do, but the average person, you're not going to get by in the next 5 years. You're going to have double your income. And that should, and yeah, if that makes you nervous, feel it. Feel it. You know, what are you going to do about it? You're going to need double what you make in 5 years from now just to buy the same foods that you got today. So it's not like you're going to double your income and have extra to spend. It'll just be to maintain your standard of living, because this is one of the weapons of this mentally defective group that I keep referring to. And Judith, what I'll do for your listeners, I'll send you 12 videos I put in an article about who the group is so that
Mm-hmm.
they can explore it. So basically understand that, I don't know where we're going, but yeah, you're going to have to change. And when you do change, you'll feel alone, which is the greatest fear that your nervous system has ever developed, to make you go back to that dysfunctional herd. And it could be, and that's why your identity too, is because you're going to be alone. You know, imagine a doctor saying, not being with the other doctors, the teacher not being with the other teachers, the hockey player not being with the other hockey player. They don't know how to navigate that. And someone who's a real success in life, and it doesn't mean you're wealthy, but they've practiced this fine art of being alone and not going mentally insane and scurrying back to the herd. I love being alone. I've figured out I can be alone usually about a full calendar week. And when I was in Mexico, I'd do a full week alone. Sometimes I'd see someone at the gym, but we'd all go out as people in the Truth and Freedom movement on a Saturday night to a beautiful restaurant. And that's really all the interaction as men in the group that we needed. And it's because we don't need the tribe. We don't need to be accepted. We don't need someone to like us and adore us and tell us we're doing good. We've become the strong cheerleader to ourselves so that our identity can't ever be held hostage. And if they said, look, the computer's going to go off, Jason, you can't post anymore, you can't write anymore, I'd be like, I'd have an identity breakdown, but I know how to recover from that.
Hmm.
I can change gears. I'll be like, I'll open a hard asset business. And I'm like, they'll be like, oh, you can't get loans because your social credit isn't good. I'm like, oh, I'll work on a farm. Like, I'll do anything, but I'm not going to have it held hostage so that I scurry back to the group, because we all want to be accepted and loved inside the herd. We're pack animals. What was funny, Judith, I just before you can comment after, but I just put a video up in one of my private groups where I teach about these things. It was a video about an elephant, and the other elephants are pushing them through the fence, like really violently. The one elephant is sort of on a brick wall around the watering hole, and one of the other elephants just rams him. Like, these are big animals, rams him into the watering hole. Looks like a pretty violent fall for a big animal. And I'm like, what's going on there? Well, you know what? That elephant, and this sounds weird, I'll send you this video too so your people can watch it. He can paint. He paints. So he goes to the humans during the day. He puts a paintbrush in his trunk and he paints these. They're not Bush League pictures. They're actually pretty nice and pretty advanced for any animal. Let's be honest. Most animals can't paint. Most humans can't paint.
Hmm.
So basically, they were attacking him and trying to discourage him from leaving the herd. And that is also natural. So when you try to get a different identity or leave the herd, they will attack you because it's also natural. It's natural for you to be nervous, but it's also natural for them to attack out of love to say, if you keep doing this, you'll be alone. And we love you so much, we'd rather have you in the tribe than outside the tribe. And also, the psychology of the human nervous system is well aware it's pretty fickle and it likes to mimic and follow. So if one tribesman leaves, someone else might say, shit, I'm going to leave too, just like monkey see, monkey do. So you have to de-incentivize the leaving of the herd by attacking the elephant just because he was a little different. That'll happen to any human if it happens to me all the time. I've been running my own businesses successfully for 30 years. I get attacked a lot more at the beginning, but once they understand, they'll never bring you down from the top of the mountain. They actually stop throwing the spears up there.
Hmm. Yeah, this fear of being alone, that is a very powerful weapon. I went through something like that in my late 30s, and in the end, it meant for me that all the social bridges, including my family, were completely broken. And the only constant in my life at that very point was my job.
Mhm.
It felt weird, very, very weird. Yeah, nervous. But you know what? After a while, I started to embrace my solitude.
Mhm.
And I guess that was in hindsight that phase which brought me to a point. There are certain things that you cannot make me do. And that is how I survived the craziness that started in 2020 and onwards.
Yeah, you did. I mean, we all know it's called the dark night of the soul,
Yeah.
this challenging time where, like, okay, we have to be alone to be safe, that there's no safety in the group because the group's running off the cliff. And they've infantilized the society as well because they've taught everybody that pain is a goblin and it's to be avoided. If you have a headache, take a Tylenol. You should be really taking away the alcohol that gave you the headache. And if you're depressed, take an antidepressant. So, what they're not telling the public is that very traditional and conventional psychology is well aware that if you want to take a child and mature them to a fully functional, independent adult, it's a process, but the process involves pain and failure and discomfort. So, tricking a population that's being infantilized because they've avoided pain their whole life is a lot easier. So that's what, again, we see the parts of the watch working together. If people were strong and even had their identity challenged, like in 2020, if they were fully functional adults, they would have the confidence they could do something else or weather the storm. But if you have a whole society, an infantilized society, where they didn't experience enough pain, discomfort, and failure to actually mature, well, then we have adults in the nursing position and all these positions, but they're adults by identification, their driver's license alone. They're not really mentally fully functional, empowered adults. In children, it's been proven to need the tribe 9 times more intensely because they're children. They don't feel like they can weather the world on their own. So all these factors, not only combined, I want people to know this, but my research is clear that these factors were all purposely weaponized against the public for at least 50 years in advance to get to the point in like the 2020, they didn't just do it like Event 201, which happened in October of 2019. And that was their first volley strike psychologically into the public forum. They've been infantilizing the public, brain damaging the public, using very horrific media, entertainment media on Netflix to change the nervous system of the human. If you make a human watch anything on Netflix, I mean, if it was Clockwork Orange with those devices that made the guys watch the movies, it'd be pretty obvious. But if you volunteer to subscribe to Netflix and you sit with your family, no one's holding you down, and you watch these, they're basically MK Ultra productions to flood your nervous systems with fear because it changes the way your brain works. That was all done decades in advance. There was 300 movies, very particular, for 15 years in advance of 2020. They were the genre virus, zombie, vaccines, save the day, apocalyptic movies like I Am Legend with Will Smith and Outbreak with Dustin Hoffman, World War Z with Brad Pitt. I Am Legend with Will. I think I mentioned that with Will
Mm.
Smith. Contagion with Matt Damon. So people really need to understand that although their identity was threatened in 2020, they got to understand how it works. And it wasn't just them trying to save you from a virus because it was never the statistics were clear. There was no pandemic. There was no increase in hospital usage markers at all, and there were no increase in death rates above background levels in 2020 whatsoever until they rolled out the vaccine. And then the hospital usage went up again. So I've explained this before. Just know they will come again. They're setting it up again. Know how the process works. Know your own nervous system. Know how you're designed. And they're trying to use that design against you, that you want safety in the herd. You're addicted to your identity. You've been you've been conditioned to be addicted to comfort, which is a laziness. That's how laziness comes about. And they're going to try and use all those to make you step off the cliff on your own so they can legally step back and say, hey, Jim jumped off the cliff. I didn't push him. So that's the end game. Psychologically, people are being weaponized against themselves. If we know what's going on, we're better apt to defend ourselves from it.
Mm. There was a time when scientists thought that, once after childhood, that the brain doesn't change a lot, that it is more or less hardwired. But now we know it does change, and it can change all the time. And that has to do with neuroplasticity. And that means if you're always using the same thoughts, then yeah, there are these neural pathways, but you can break away from that and create new neural pathways.
Yeah, the bigger the emotional impact, the bigger the threat, the bigger the fear. It can like bypass the old pathways and sort of electrify new areas. And mind control. I mean, if you go to a hypnotist show, you'll see people do things that are completely bizarre. I went to an X-rated hypnotist show. I think I told you one time, and my friend had his pants off. He had his underwear on, mind you, but it was in front of 3,000 people. It's still not a place to have just your underwear on. And he was having intercourse with furniture, uh, and so it doesn't matter about the pathways. They're there if you know how to access them.
Mm.
So it wasn't like the hypnotist put some new pathways into my friend's, his name is John, and put it into his brain. He just went to a very particular part of the brain that's super obedient and super reflexively compliant. And he told that reflexively obedient part of the brain to have, fake intercourse with some furniture that was up on the stage, and it got a lot of laughs. But the point is, this is the same technology that was used against the public in 2020 as well to access this hyper obedience, super reflexively obedient part of the nervous system. And we have to understand that, nothing we're doing is based on logic or rational thought. The nervous system doesn't run on rational thought or logic unless we interfere. If we don't interfere, if we don't educate, and we don't understand how our processes work, we will always revert back to the herd-based behavior as I'll just go with the herd and hopefully I'll be safe. But that's what they're weaponizing against the people.
Yeah. And that is hard to understand because it is, yeah, that is so old, this feeling of I'm safe with my herd. And yeah, there probably was a time when that was correct, but that time is long, long gone.
Yeah, and if you're very herd specific, and we're seeing a lot of this today, people are very loyal to their herds, it can actually stop the thinking. So let's say like the Trump herd, we
Mm.
had when you're loyal to the herd, but like 100%, and you're inside this herd-based behavior, you can actually shut down your own thinking. So with the Trump herd, they are missing the point that it was, say, Trump that rolled out Operation Warp Speed and started this legal cascade of people volunteering for their own euthanasia. And if you're part of the gay community and you're just 100% in the gay community, nothing that the gay community does is wrong, then you're going to be tribally affiliated with them, regardless if it's right or wrong. And then you're going to miss what the pride flag is doing inside the schools, which is basically castrating and sterilizing the children. So we have to be this is the most dangerous aspect. Carl Jung said this. He's the famous psychiatrist. He says this is the most dangerous aspect. His group affiliation will always usually make the person ignore any dangerous ceremony or ritual of the herd. So it can get unless we don't take a side. That's why I say don't affiliate with a herd. Just don't take a side and just judge things on facts alone. Because if we don't judge on facts, we're judging on herd affiliation. And then it means that our leader can commit crimes, which they're all doing, and we turn a blind eye to it because it's our guy, it's our herd. Very dangerous.
Mm. So we are social beings. There's no way around that. We like the company of others. Do you think there will come a time when we are really capable of forming, yeah, let's say, informed tribes and tribes that do not want to dictate to you how you have to think, feel, and act?
It's natural to want to think, feel, and act with any environment you're in. And I've tried to find my tribe. I've gone to truth conferences, and I still haven't found my tribe. I mean, there was one truth conference I'd like to go to, but the tickets involve all you can drink alcohol. People are smoking marijuana there, which I know is very bad for the hippocampus, and they're doing plant medicine all night. And I'm like, no, not my tribe. Not going to say it isn't for some people, it isn't a level or step up for some people to explore, but for the tribe I'm looking for, I mean, I tell people, look, my tribe, we're gonna get physically fit, financially fit, spiritually fit, intellectually fit, and we're going to war. We're not running around the forest at night. We need to be sleeping. We don't drink alcohol because it's a poison. And if we're going to develop a society of warriors that has the energy resources and the strength resources to fight these battles, we got to leave these childhood illusions in the past, because all this alcohol and all this marijuana and all this stuff, these are old Egyptian enslavement secrets. I mean, they're not even secrets, just, when they're starting to get rowdy, throw the alcohol at them, throw the weed at them. I mean, this is what happened in the 1960s with Timothy Leary and this guy called Sidney Gottlieb from the CIA. They're like, hey, people are waking up over there. Sidney Gottlieb worked for the CIA. He got together with Timothy Leary, says, send in the acid. Send in the acid. We'll make the acid, send it in. They'll disperse quickly, and we'll employ them after as well. Because a lot of people that are working for the government today, crushing rights, were part of the hippie movement in the 1960s and 70s. This group knows how to use drugs and alcohol to really disempower any movement at any time. This is why in Canada, over the past 10 years, it went from the doctor can prescribe marijuana to today, where the marijuana is, I mean, in my old town of 50,000 people, there's 15 marijuana shops. You can walk in without any ID and buy as much marijuana as you want.
Hmm. Yeah, even the Romans had great success with that concept, panem et circenses, bread and games.
Yeah.
And how degenerate it was, sitting there and cheering somebody on to take another gladiator's life, and you actually feel joy about that. That is, I mean, wow.
They know how to do it. They're doing it today. I mean, we got our strongest men. Like what's funny, when I watch the UFC, I'm like, when are one of you guys going to beat up someone who tried to kill you instead of beating up your friends? Because this is what they have us doing. They laugh at us because our strongest males are the ones that should be protecting us. Some of the strongest fighters are in the Ultimate Fighting Championship, the UFC, and they beat each other up. When really, as you know, some of this group I talk about, these ancient ruling families, tried to kill that guy, tried to kill his wife, tried to kill his kids, tried to kill his mom, tried to kill his dad, and they still fight each other. In the ruling group, laugh. Just say, look at these, unintellectual, unfocused human beings who can't even defend themselves and can't even muster the courage to actually battle the force that's worth battling.
Mm. Yeah, and especially here in the West, I would say men have been deliberately feminized to the point where a lot of men can't even defend themselves, let alone their family or somebody else.
Yeah, and again, it's just like the person who might have taken the shot, it's not their fault. They're up against huge psychological weaponry, what's called fifth generation warfare. And the males, again, 30 years prior, 40 years prior, we have the chemicals atrazine and bisphenol A and all these what they call endocrine disruptors. Sounds like a very cozy name, but it's meant to feminize the men. Atrazine is proven to turn test animals homosexual, and there's nothing wrong with being, homosexual. But if there's a guy out there developing, that's what atrazine is, a pesticide, and he developed the pesticide purposely to turn the population homosexual, that's a problem
Mm,
because you're not having a say, you're not in control. It's on your food, and you're getting this result that they've never told you about. So yeah, the men have been feminized and they've been disempowered as well, where alcohol was really a big psychological operation for the men. And so the men aren't as attractive anymore physically. Financially, they're very weak. Again, not their fault because they're under psychological operations. And psychologically, they're damaged. They're being circumcised, which causes a whole bunch of brain changes that disempowers the male, and the job focus. I mean, having a male, especially sit in a class. I mean, most of the kids on Ritalin and Adderall, they're all, they're males because we're not supposed to be sitting down. We're supposed to be outside bashing things, getting our bodies toned and fit for what we're supposed to do here on the planet. So it all works together. So there was a big, the huge attack in 2020. Where were the men? Well, they're kind of weak and everybody's living check to check, even if they're making a couple hundred grand. They've already obligated themselves financially with payments to the point where they can't survive a minor impact financially. The house of cards comes tumbling. And all this work to get, and most people are weak. They're addicted to their comforts. They're in their comfort comas. They're lazy. They can't even they could never even stop what they're doing. They couldn't cancel their Netflix. They'd have too much pain. They couldn't stop dyeing their hair or doing their like in men. I know men are like, I had to take the shot. I have to afford my steroids. So I have a 19-inch arms. Everybody had the reason to take it, but it had to do with these false identities that we needed to maintain to make ourselves feel, get our emotional needs met. And this topsy-turvy planet mental asylum society that we live in. And again, the reason I give the description isn't to make it a doom and gloom, but know how it works, know how you work. You're a herd-based animal. They're going to weaponize that, make you feel ostracized. Your biggest fear is loneliness, whether you think you're super tough or not, and they're going to try and send you home to be by yourself if you don't participate in the next medical experiment. Just know where the nervous system, the nervousness will come from, and start building your strength right away. Like today, start building financial strength, physical strength, spiritual strength. Know why you're here, emotional strength. Don't get nervous because fear shuts down the prefrontal cortex. That's the part of your brain you need to stay strong. So don't get afraid. That's emotional strength. Intellectual strength is sort of knowing how these things work, how you work, what they're trying to do, and be strong enough to be alone because that's where you're going to end up. Be alone and know that the storm will always pass. Like, look at the people today who know now this COVID vaccine didn't even qualify as a vaccine. There's very dangerous ingredients in it, causes heart attacks and strokes and autoimmune diseases and fatal blood clots. And so many people wish they never took it. Well, it's going to come again. And the people who didn't take it, we we did everything. We sat in the corner, we cried, so lonely. We did we went through hell and back to deny the herd pressure. It took a huge toll on us, but we're very happy that we did it. We sat with the paying teacher and she gave us our reward, which is, we're purebloods.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And here in Germany, now we have something called RKI. It's the equivalent of the CDC. And now a former employee of the RKI has released all the files from all those years. Um, the whistleblower gave it to an independent journalist. She uploaded everything. You can download it now. And yeah, everything you say is correct. And it is, let's say, yeah, a late satisfaction for those who were steadfast and who didn't waver. But of course, during that time, it was hard. It was not an easy thing to do, but
It
everybody can be
wasn't.
proud of themselves.
Yeah, and that delayed satisfaction is what entrepreneurs deal with all the time. When I work, it might take 2 years to get the big smile on my face, or I'll get an extra week vacation, or maybe I could fly business class over a long distance and not end up in a wheelchair when I get off, on a 14-hour flight to give a talk. Maybe I can have an extra $2,000 for a business class accommodation. And so it's this delayed gratification. I don't live in a mansion. I don't even have a car. I don't even own a car. I don't even own a house. But there's this delayed gratification that all sort of adults know that, yeah, I could have the instant gratification. That's an addiction. I want to be happy now instead of happy later. I'll take door number one instead of door number two. I'll take the shot and deal with it later. Well, as a child mind, it might seem, children think 5 or 10 or 15 hours down the road. That's why you can give a child a whole bag of cookies and they'll eat half of it till they're sick. I'm like, well, you should have known that. Well, they don't think long term. And adults, a real adult, like myself, I think 5, 10, 15 years down the road, what am I going to do when I'm 60? How am I going to make money when I'm 70? And when I go and work out, I'm working out now so that I can walk when I'm 80. So everything I do is about long-term thinking. And again, if you infantilize the society and you don't initiate the brain changes, that can only happen when you feel discomfort, failure, and pain, well, then you get all these adults and children in adult bodies, and they're going to take door number one. They're going to think 5, 10, and 15 days down the road that, yeah, I'll take the shot. Everybody will like me. I get to put my little button up on my social media. I got vaccinated, and everybody's going to clap. And the NHS, you clang the pans for them, and like in the UK, and you'll get all these what they call the low-hanging fruit,
Yeah.
where real adults are like, I'm not taking that bullshit low-hanging fruit. It's a trap. It's a trap. I'm not going to do it because you can, a real adult be like, I'm not going to take an exchange where I might get happy for 15 days and screw myself for the rest of my life. A real adult can't make that deal with the devil, only because they're hardwired to think long term, but your brain will only get there if you sit with your pain, if you invite the pain teacher in, if you work through the pain and work on being alone. Then these brain changes where you think long term, they happen naturally. But if the first thing you do on a hard day is have a cigarette or drink or a line of coke, or you smoke a joint, you don't allow the nervous system to adapt to the pain, and you never mature into a fully functional adult. So you can see again all the watch pieces coming together for a great ambush in 2020. It's coming again. So I always tell people, look, if you don't know where to start, physical pillar of health, there's a 5-pillar system that I teach, and the physical pillar of strength is where the other 4 lay upon. So if you don't know anything about emotional strength, intellectual, spiritual, financial, even if you want to be a good entrepreneur, you got to be strong and healthy, because you're going to work long hours and you're going to experience failure and you're going to need some extra energy. So regardless, always start with your physical pillar of strength and just get healthy. I tell people all the time, I think I told you last time, the only book you'll ever need is this one book from this guy. He doesn't even really know me. His name's Paul Chek, Chek. It's How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy. Read that book, live those principles. That'll take care of your physical pillar of strength. Then move on to your financial. And I teach courses and all these things, how to start businesses, how to develop a business mindset. Um, I'm not, it's not a ShamWow commercial, but if you need a mentor, just email me at info@jchristoff.com. And I only teach these courses 2 to 3 times a year, and there's one coming up at the end of October.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. And yeah, pain and anger, they are also connected. And I guess they give us a lot of distraction, be it alcohol, be it movies, whatever it is, so that the development from pain to anger gets disrupted.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if the pain gets too much, then of course the people get angry. So you have to intervene before that happens.
Absolutely.
And people who have a tendency to numb themselves, they will not get angry.
No, because they never let it, never let it cook or bake long enough. So that it destroys their action, because then they become with that closed system in their brain. Pain happens, have some wine. Pain happens, have some wine. Pain happens, have some wine. Now, if they do that all the time, they'll lose their physical health as well. So what good's anger if you don't have the physical strength to do something about the pressure?
Hmm. Yeah. And it's your body, your nervous system is informing you that something is wrong. And that is the purpose of pain. And trying to avoid it constantly does not serve anybody. Yeah, well, some people up the ladder, yeah, it serves them well, but not the individual.
Yeah, you have to find the message in the pain. Like PA in Canada means public announcement. So pain is like public announcement in. That's how you spell pain, pain, public announcement inside. And you have to sort of go through it. It's not necessarily maybe your initial judgment might be a little off. That's why emotional stability is strength is really important. Keep calm. Like even when the Trump shooting went, people were putting out all these theories. I said, look, we really don't have enough information. I don't really know what's happening. To me, it looks like he did get shot, but I assume it probably didn't because I know everything's a big game, but I don't have any evidence either way. People can't stay calm. They lose their minds. It's like one side or the other. Everybody digs in and starts fighting. um, you got to be calm because your life might depend on it. This just isn't about, like I said, some corrupt politicians passing, $20,000 back and forth in, brown envelopes. This is about if you get this wrong and you can't stay calm and you can transition out of your old identity into a new one, or you're willing to take the low hanging fruit and think like a child and make the deal with the devil for like 15 days satisfaction and screw the rest, like you could die. This isn't just, this isn't a mistake you can learn from. These mistakes in from 2020 forward, a lot of them are fatal. You die in the video game, you die in real life. But we have to be a lot smarter. And because this group is obsessed with death, I tell people, look, life, you living drives them crazy. So if
Hmm.
you really want to drive them crazy, live as long as you can because they're obsessed with death. They're obsessed with wiping you out. And the longer you can survive, the more power you extract from their plans. And they don't have unlimited power. They have the taxes they stole from us. They're spending all that like wildfire. They stole from us for 20 years before the 2020 attack. They're going to run out of money. And the longer you can live, the more pressure you put on their financial resources of bribery and coercion. It's not unlimited. Your long life is the weapon against their tyranny.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So, is there anything else you would like to add that is important or that we haven't touched on?
I just tell people don't fret. It's these things happen from time to time. There's cycles. Judith will tell you they're definitely in the stars, and we can get by it. And if you're trying to get healthy or trying to get financially fit or spiritually fit, it goes in cycles as well. It's about progress. It's not about perfection. You're drinking alcohol and you drink every night. If you do 4 nights of not drinking and 3 nights of drinking, might be the first time your liver ever had a break. It's a huge victory. If you're smoking regular cigarettes and you go to organic tobacco where there's no added chemicals, you're doing so good for your body. When we coach, we say, if I had an alcoholic who was addicted to vodka, I said, can we at least do a step one? There's something called rain. It's organic vodka. I said, can we at least go to some organic vodka to tone down the glyphosate in what you're consuming? The guy's like, of course, I love getting drunk. I can't believe this is a recommendation. I said, absolutely. Let's take the stepped approach and realize it's all about starting to practice self-love because repetition rules the nervous system. So if I can trick that person and educate them to the point where they're applying self-love daily, where they're starting to curtail the poisons over a long period, they're actually reprogramming their own nervous system to adapt and adopt more self-loving behaviors in the future. So again, it's not about perfection, it's about progress. Start where you are, use what you have, do what you can, and just know, even myself, I quit drinking for 9 years in a row. And then one of my friends passed away. He used to own a bar in Santorini, and they say one of his wishes, you got to come to the bar for a celebration of life, and he wanted you to get drunk and dance on the bar like you used to when you were a kid. And I said, all right, today's the day. I stopped the 9 year sobriety, and just know that you will always go back and forth into what's called the self-sabotage tool shed, which means your old addictions are there. You're afraid of being, ostracized by the herd. You go in there and trying to do the herd behavior. You want to dull your pain. You can't take it anymore. And you go in, everybody goes back into the self-sabotage tool shed. Your victory is measured in the durations that should be longer and longer outside the shed. You will always go back in. I did 9 years outside the shed of alcohol, went back in for one night, and then continued on for about 3 or 4 years after that, then had another drink with a friend or something. But consider the alternate reality where I was drinking 15 martinis once a week,
Wow.
right?
Mm.
So the body is stronger, you're more resilient, your brain is functioning better, you can see the reality better, and that's it's progress. It's evolution, and it's what the world needs. We all need to start reducing the poisons so collectively we're not as stunned, because we're sort of stunned now as a collective, not that we're born like that. They've dumbed us down, they poisoned us, they toxified us. It's time to start backing out of it.
Mm. Yeah, and I think that is a better way. Some people can do it, make the hard cut from one day to another, but those are very few. And I
Mhm.
think your option, just slowly but gradually reduce it. And that way you don't go into total overdrive. So, yeah, it's a good idea.
Absolutely. Yeah, you got to make, if you make a promise to yourself, try to keep it, because it's really important psychically for your energy field to keep promises that you make with yourself. So if you're going to make a promise, maybe you do no coffee for 2 days and then you'll have it on the third day. It's better than saying, I'll never drink coffee again. And then, on the seventh day, you find yourself upside down doing, a keg chug from a coffee machine. So just make a promise, but make it in a small duration so you keep it. And that keeps a strong psychic contract with yourself, improves your psychic strength. And if you don't think this group works in the psychic realm, unfortunately, you need to pay closer attention. 90% of their work is in the psychic realm to disempower us energetically and etherically, not sort of chemically. So they work in that same realm.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Jason, I thank you so much for coming, for your time and your insights. And we will certainly have you back.
Absolutely,
And
Julie.
yeah, guys, that was it. Night flight for today. And we see you all next time. Bye bye.